As I'm making these videos, I have a suggestion. Someone needs to take notice of them and do a news story on them, write a book, create a movie, tell your friends, tell your family, and get the message out. When I did my first video, I mentioned something about being a witness to pre-9/11 events. I got something to say before I talk about this. A majority of my family served in the military. I was brought up to have great respect for the flag, the country. My family was very active in the Legion for a long time until our health got too bad. During the Iraq War, my mom and my sister helped put together care baskets for members that were serving service members in Iraq, including my neighbor that I went to school with. We were brought up with the motto, serve others, not yourself. And my mom even worked in a factory making nose cones and mine plates for the military. We have a great respect for the service members, and I grew up with many of them. I'm going to tell you about what happened here, and this, you need to really listen closely because this was not right. I took a job working at a local landfill and turned down the opportunity to take a job overseas. The job at the landfill didn't hardly pay anything, but I needed to be close because my stepdad was in bad health and he was reaching end stage, so I needed to be close. At this time, the landfill the buildings were located in differently than they are now. There was a recycling building, a large one, right at the beginning on the left-hand side of the entrance, and then it was a small scale house. And then there was a recycling building to the far left, and then just left of the scale was the break room and kind of a maintenance storage. And then down below there was a maintenance building for the dozer, and then between that building and the other one they would put dumpsters where people would throw their trash in that didn't have to go up on the hill in the actual landfill and get stuck. On this day, a car pulled in, square-bodied, faded-out Honda with Florida plates, and there was a car following behind. It was like a Lincoln or a Ford LTD, like you see a cop car, made into that model. And it was kind of a mauve color, so it wasn't exactly light blue, but it kind of had kind of a pinkish tint to it. And the guy was wearing a suit, and in the faded out black Honda with Florida plates, there was 3 individuals in it. Now, the Ford followed the Honda over the scale, back behind the building, and they dumped items off. And like I said, you can spot when something's isn't right. And right away, it can be noticed that, hey, there's something up with this because, there's a car following behind, a guy in a suit, and it didn't look right. So this was about 11 o'clock in the morning. I know that because I would always take my break just before 11 o'clock before the recycling trucks would come in. And as I walked up to the recycling building, I could see the car was parked there, the faded out Honda with the Florida plates, and the other car was parked off to the side. And he was watching the 3 people in the Honda. I went into the recycling building, and the recycling building, the way it was set up then, there was a low movable concrete wall that you threw the items over, and then off to the left there was a higher concrete wall that encased all of it in, so you could take an end loader or a skid loader and scoop up the recycling and put it in a compactor. They started throwing items in there that were not recyclable, and I said, hey, you can't do that. You get that out of here. And right away, the guy that was bald says to me, he gets up to me as close where I can make sure I hear him with the loud equipment, and he says, you need to take all those items out of there and go put them someplace and keep them. He says, I'll even autograph them for you. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, we're going to go fly. He said, they're going to be flying airplanes into the World Trade Center in New York and some other buildings. And they were hired to do this. And that's the proof. I thought, what the heck are you talking about? I talked to him for a few minutes, and then the other two get out of the car. Now, the one that was doing all the talking was tall and bald, and he talked like he had kind of an accent. One of them they were all thin, but one of them had hair kind of combed nicely, and the other one, he spoke English, not very well, but he spoke English. The other one had kind of a bushy hair, and he couldn't speak any English at all. In fact, the other guy that had the well-combed hair kept on translating to the one that had the kind of the bushy hair. And they all three came up to me, and so the two that could speak English was telling me what they had planned and what they were going to do. Now, this is really something. They're trying to tell me as fast as they can these plans. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if you're going to be doing this, why are you telling me? And why are you wanting to autograph the items, and why are you telling me to take them out of the trash? They told me that there's these people that go to foreign countries and they convince people like them to join up with them, and they go around and they try to find people that might fit into their agenda. So somebody might be good at computers, somebody might be good in combat, somebody might be a good hunter, somebody might even be into science, or somebody might be good into law. And they try to find a place to fit all these people in. Now, foreign countries, the lifespan may be a lot shorter than it is in the United States. And the US dollar compared to their dollar might be a huge difference. So they try to convince them that if they join, they can send money over to their relatives, and their relatives might have a better chance to get out of there and have a better life. I could see how they got convinced. But that doesn't mean that they agreed with it. And I'm starting to get the opinion that these three people didn't quite agree with what they were doing. They were telling me they can be over here, and a lot of them will get hired as cleaners or some other menial job, and they'll find a place for them and they'll get them set up, and they may not ever be called on to do anything. This might just be what they'll do for the rest of their life, and they might just get lucky and they can send money back to their folks and they're all good. On the other hand, they might call up on them and say, hey, I want you to do something bad, like in this case. They were telling me about this group, and I'm going to tell you, when I heard it, I thought, you got to be kidding me. They talked about a group called the Consortium. And they said the Consortium was made of a bunch of wealthy people, super wealthy people. And they get together and they have an agenda that they want to push on the world. If you're somebody that listens into government conspiracies, you might have heard this name. And this was really interesting. They were saying that the people are the judge, the people. Hold on here. So like when they do this horrific act of flying planes into buildings and destroying them, they said that the people, the citizens of the United States, are the judge, the jury, the cash cow, the consumer. And doing the act is like getting cattle to run. They said that this group, this super rich group, has these get-togethers where they have dinners and people pay so much for a plate and they're all members, and they call themselves patriots and legionnaires. And they think they're doing this for some greater belief that they believe in. And they have so much money that he said you wouldn't believe it at their disposal. They left, and oh wait a minute, let's back up here. There was other employees besides me that witnessed this. I should have mentioned that. There was other employees that noticed what happened and got into the conversation towards the end. They got in their car and they left. And as soon as they pulled out, the other car pulled in. The guy in the suit gets out. And he asks the employees that are standing there, what did they tell you? What did they say? What did they throw out? And he never showed us a badge. And the strange thing was, he actually offered us money. He was flashing money. He says, "Well, I'll pay you. You tell me what they threw out and what they told you." And I just pointed over the wall to look. So he's seen what got thrown over the wall. He's seen that there was flight software, notebooks with handwritten notes, textbooks, a dead man's computer, which is like a slide ruler, role-playing cards, decks of role-playing cards that were jihad and ilumanti, and a mixture of the paper or the notebooks was papers with a government header. That guy told us to get rid of it. You told us to get rid of all of it. You don't ever want to see it. Nobody knew that they were ever there. Never knew that. Nobody was supposed to know that he was there. We were supposed to dispose of it all. One of the employees managed to scoop up some of that material, and it got put in the compactor. But after he left, we grabbed some of the items and put them up on a concrete wall on the side. If we would have known how important it was at that moment, we would have kept it all. And what happened is so strange. Why did those future people that were hired to be terrorists that were sent to learn how to fly airplanes out of flight school want us to keep that evidence? They knew, they were smart enough to know that they could have thrown it, all of it, in the dumpster. But instead, they brought it up to the recycling building, and then the one points out, hey, take all that stuff and put it someplace, and I'll even autograph it for you because it'll be worth something someday. That's just really strange. Some days passed, and we were talking about what happened. And we were headed there at the break room about it, and the consensus between the employees that seen what was happening was Well, somebody needs to call somebody and tell them. And I was pretty much the one elected since I was the one that heard the most of it. So I looked up the local FBI phone number and I called and I left a brief description of what happened, and they said they were going to send somebody out to talk to me. The person that they sent out to talk to me was the exact same guy that was there that told me to get rid of the evidence. This time he showed me his badge. This time he was so mad that he threatened to kill us if we told anybody. He said that he could set us up for a crime and we would not be able to prove that we didn't do it. He said that if we told anyone, they would die. And if they had to, they would eliminate our entire family lines. The guy left, but when those terrorists, future terrorists, were there, and they're telling us about these dinners that they had, that the Consortium would have, and that would have, you know, it's how they would generate a lot of their income that goes to their funding and their plans. And they talked about the locations. One of them was in Colorado, and one of them was in Florida. Now this is kind of interesting because now all these years later, that area in Florida has become quite famous. And two of the people from the landfill frequented there. One thing I left out, I forgot to mention, was when those people were talking about the Consortium, and they tap people. They don't just tap people in foreign countries and try to get them to do bad things. They tap people over here. So you may be somebody over here that they think they got a use for you. So for every person they tap, you're a resource in some way or another. I got canned from that job over what happened, or let go. All of us did. Well, they quit first, didn't they? The other two quit first.
They were afraid.
They quit first, so I was the last one there. Okay. Some interesting things started happening. We're talking like the government was, whoever it was really coming down on us hard. We had agents in cars sitting in front of our house, across the field from us in two different directions. There's a graveyard in the other direction, and part of the time they'd be sitting there. If we would go to town, they followed us. If we would go to the park, they followed us. It started out them just following me, and then it was they were following the other two employees too. And it really got crazy. We got phone calls with death threats, telling us not to tell anybody. My health was really bad at the time, and I had an eye injury from that job. My cornea came loose. And I was going to the University of Iowa at the time, and eventually, between that and the constant vertigo and the other health problems I had, they told me I should file for disability. These people had so much power that they got into everything. They got into my health care. They got into my disability. I mean, it was just unreal. We were warned not to tell anybody. And I don't know who the other two employees told. And I don't want to tell you who this happened to. But there was several people that I had told, and they had accidents. They're gone. They took what I said seriously, and they're gone. Those accidents were not accidents, because we got phone calls telling us, well, you're going to learn not to tell anybody every time you do. And I'm surprised that they didn't kill us. I really am. I had one incident at the hospital that didn't make any sense. And you know what? Maybe they were trying to do me in. I don't know. I was getting help to the state. When you get help to the state, you have to go with the care that they suggest, or you lose it. And they kept on pushing Botox, and the Botox was making me sick for a stiff neck. And I didn't want to go through it. You had to. So I had the Botox injection. And all of a sudden, my heart felt like it was going to just jump out of my chest. My head felt like it was going to explode. And the doctor says, "Oh, you're not doing good. You need to get out of here." Well, I could barely walk. I was hanging onto the wall to get out of there. And I managed to get in a car. And I should never even have left the hospital. And I stopped at the closest place to go to the bathroom. And what happened to me was getting worse. And I was shaking. And I was choking on and spitting up pink foam that was from the inside of me. It was like it was dissolving. With some help of some other bystanders, they managed to get me into the ER at the University of Iowa. And my blood pressure shot up to 200. And they said I was going into shock, and they didn't think I would ever walk out of there. They really didn't think I would ever walk out of there. They put me on a bunch of drugs to get the blood pressure down, and shots or medications of some kind because I was having an allergic reaction, to it. And oh man, I survived, but it was real rough. It was bad. I don't know if that was them trying to get rid of me, or it was just an accident. But the University of Iowa says they don't understand how they've done Botox shots regularly to people, and they've never ever seen that happen. It's the first time they ever saw it happen. Now, the items that was thrown over the dump, and then dump, out of all the employees, they managed to save a few of those items. Dead man's computer, which is a slide ruler for pilots. Here's the case that it was in, and instruction manual, which she offered to autograph, but I didn't notice. I don't think he autographed it. There's a patch. This shows that they were at the presidential inauguration parade, January 20th, 1997. It was almost as if they chose the items that they threw over the wall very carefully. The other thing they threw over was a bunch of playing cards. Jihad and ilumanti playing cards. And now, they're kind of a collector's item, and I didn't know this, because they actually predict events in the future so well that the FBI wanted them off the market. And they threw out about, 5 or 6 decks of them? Okay. Now, this happened, you're going to be surprised. When those terrorists showed up and told us, future terrorists showed up and told us what they were going to do, that was a year and a half before the 9/11 attacks. So that means we knew a year and a half in advance what was going to happen. So we had a year and a half to try to tell people. And believe me, we tried to tell people. But put yourself in our position. You got the government coming down on us, telling us they're going to kill us, do bad things to us if we tell anybody. Bad things and people are dying. Bad things are happening and people are dying. We're being watched 24 hours a day. Even the internet slowed down to a creeping pace. I was trying to advertise items online, and I mentioned in a previous video about a camera that I had used. A 1.3 megapixel camera on dial-up took 6 hours to load a picture. You know something was wrong if it took 6 hours to load a 1.3 megapixel picture. Okay, so we do a year and a half in advance, and like I told you, some bad things happen to some people. So one of the employees that was also having problems, even though he didn't have much money to afford it, he managed to get a ticket and flew to New York ahead of time. Now, quite a bit ahead of time, but he flew to New York ahead of time and went to those places and bought up some of the memorabilia. And I don't know, maybe he tried to tell some people, but the thing is, nobody would listen to us. He left me a picture. In fact, he took a lot of pictures, but there's a picture of the towers, if you can see it. The day that it happened, and let me tell you, we tried to tell people, and nobody would listen. And we were stopped. In every way you can think of, we were stopped. The day that it happened, I had a bad migraine and vertigo really bad. And first off, we heard on the TV that these planes were hijacked. And the first thing that came to my mind is, oh my God, somebody's got to tell them. Our phones wouldn't work. Our cell phones wouldn't work. I don't know who we would call, but God, we had to call somebody. When the planes hit, I fell to my knees and just bawled. It was wrong. It was so wrong. So anyway, it just still upsets me. So, there's family members that have been in the service that have talked about this, and they're mad about it too. Why does nobody know the truth? It's wrong. So, even to this day, since that happened, and this is, God, it's been almost 20 years now. I'm still having problems with the government. But you have to understand, and it took me a long time, you got to think about this. When I say it's the government giving me problems, it's not the government itself. It's the organization that has deep roots in the government that is doing it. When I filed for disability, and I had my hearing, I had a lawyer from Boston that flew in. And 1 hour before the hearing, while we were waiting, somebody walks out and tells us that the judge just threw out all the evidence. And the lawyer said, what? You can't do that. That's not legal. You can't throw out all the evidence. She said, and this lady said, well, I'm just referring the message to you. So I had my hearing, and the judge said, state your name and a few things, and that was it. I had no case because everything was thrown out. After that day, there was numerous lawyers that heard what happened. And all of them came to the same opinion that because we were witnesses to the pre-event of 9/11, they were making an example of us, what would happen if we went against them. So those lawyers fought for me for free. I don't think that happens very often. They pressed charges against the judge. The last I knew, the charges stood, and the judge was supposed to stay in lockup for 24 hours as a penalty. I don't know if it happened or not. That's what I was told. I never did get my disability. We tried to file again, but the Social Security Administration drug it out. By the time I was able to for the hearing and do everything, my work credits were gone. So I was pretty much screwed. As if you've watched the other videos, I had another option because of this business idea that I had come up with, but I got took from that too, from you know who. So now I'm pretty much stuck. There's something. If there's one thing you can take from this, I know it was right to try to let people know, and I know what happened was wrong. But you know what? I lost so much by trying to do what was right and let people know it wasn't worth it. If I would have known what was going to happen to me, no matter how right it was, I don't think I'd do it again because I lost so much. And it still happened. And your friends and your family died. For those of you that are out there that have heard, you know, hey, you know, this was planned, well, I can tell you, now that I was a witness, I know that it was planned. So I still feel bad about it. For a long time, every time the day would come around, I would contact some 9/11 group and kind of leave a hint about what happened. But after being diagnosed with the muscular dystrophy and the Sjogren's and knowing that, you know, my life might be shorter and the quality of life ain't gonna be so good, I kind of feel like, you know what, I don't care if you hurt me now, I'm gonna tell everybody I can. I'm gonna tell everybody. So, there it is, that's what happened. Let people know. Thank you.